we're going to be talking all about expat mortgages. We have been getting lots of inquiries about expat mortgages, so we'll be going over some of the most popular questions that we've been asked and also the lending criteria, and we'll give you some of our top tips for applying for an expat mortgage. Hello, welcome back to our channel and podcast. My name's Gemma, and here at WAS we talk about all things relating to money, mortgages and positive money mindset. So if that interests you, then be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the thumbs up. It really helps with our YouTube algorithm and means that you won't miss out on any of our videos. On today's episode of Let's Talk Money and Mortgages, we have Ifthi here with us. Ifthi is a trained accountant and mortgage broker who has been in the industry for over 10 years, and he is also one of the founding partners here at WIS. Hi Ifthi, how are you doing today?
Hi, very well, thank you. How are you doing, Gemma?
Oh, I'm good, thank you. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
So listen, let's get into this. What is an expat mortgage?
So let me explain what an expat is. An expat is a citizen of one country who is living in a different country. So just to be exact, say if I'm a British citizen and I'm living in Hong Kong and working in Hong Kong, I'm classified as an expat. So the general mortgages don't apply to me because now I'm classified as an expat. So therefore there are special mortgages that I have to apply for. So those are known as expat mortgages.
Okay, thank you. So what is then the first thing that you need to do when you move overseas and you have a mortgage?
Yeah, that's very, very important that you follow this, because if you are moving overseas, you have to inform the bank that you are going overseas, because there is a lot of risk when you're overseas, because obviously you're not close to the property. The bank doesn't know who is looking after the property. And also there can be violations of insurances as well, because you're not in the property, right? So you got to inform the bank and get a consent to let at least. So the bank has to give you permission to let it out while you're overseas. So you have to be very clear that you're going to go overseas. So you have to do that as a first step. So without that, you'll be violating some of the terms of the mortgage. So you have to inform the bank. So that's the first thing you need to do.
And what do you do if you're not going to rent it out and you just say you're going for like a year and you're going to come back again? Like, would you still have to let them know?
Yes. Yeah, it is part of the condition of the mortgage that you have to inform them that you're going abroad. So at least you're aware your property is vacant, right? So if it's just closed up, the banks don't like it. And it, like I said, it also affects some of your insurances. If you look at some of the home insurance policies, it says if you're out of the house for longer than 30 days, they need to know about it because there's risk, like there can be a burglary or we might have squatters, those things happen, right? So you have to inform the bank irrespective.
Okay. In what other ways can being an expat affect your mortgage then?
So expat is quite different to a normal UK person, because obviously first thing you earn in a different currency, because obviously you're working abroad. Somebody working in the US, he or she will be earning in US dollars, right? So it'll be subject to exchange rate fluctuations. So the banks will normally look at your income. If you earn say $100,000, they might take 25% off that, right? And they might only consider 75,000. The other thing is that your bank may not offer expat mortgages. Not all banks are in this space, right? Because some banks are a little reluctant to offer expat mortgages. So they might not be in this space. So they might say, sorry, I don't want to deal with you because we don't do expat mortgages. So your bank might not want to, deal with you. The third thing is, even if a bank agrees that they want to give you a mortgage, they might want to see you, right? So you might be in the US, but to give you a mortgage, they'll say, okay, but we need to see you in the UK, right? So there are banks who do things like that as well, right? So you have to be a little mindful of that. And the fourth thing is the rates, the interest rates on the expats are a little higher, right? So it's about 1.5% depending on your circumstances, more than what you would normally pay for a residential mortgage, right? You're subject to that higher interest rate depending on the bank and depending on the deal. So you will end up paying a little bit more in general, yeah.
Yeah, you said something interesting there. You said that banks would expect to see you in person. Now, how does that kind of work with remortgaging if you're an expat?
Yeah, some banks want to see you in person because they'll say, otherwise, sorry, we can't deal with you. But some banks are okay. So we may have to work with banks who are, if they are particular that you have to come and it's not practical for you to come, we probably have to go to a different bank who will allow you to do that. So that's when people like us brokers come into play, because we can find a lender who will be able to help you out.
What are the types of residential expat mortgages that we have here in the UK?
Okay, there aren't types as such, but in general, there's two types of people who need these mortgages. One is an expat who's currently working in X country and want to move back into the UK, and they are thinking of buying a residential home to the UK. So that's one type of expat, right? Now, for those people, it's easier to get mortgages if you are working in a multinational, say for example, we dealt with a client who works in Shell, right? So he's moving from X country back to UK. So for him, it's easier to work out a mortgage because he's moving back to the UK, but he's moving to the same company. So for people like that, it's a little easy. But likewise, you have people who are moving back to the UK, they found another job, so banks will accommodate things like that. So that's one type, right? So people who are moving back to the UK. And the second type is people who are actually not moving back to the UK, but say the main person, like say for example, let's say husband and wife, and husband works abroad, say in Hong Kong, for example.
Yeah.
But the family wants to move back, right? So the husband says, okay, let's buy a property in the UK. So that's the second type that we see a lot, right? So those sort of mortgages we do as well. So those are the two main categories we see. But if somebody says, oh, I want to buy a residential mortgage in the UK, but I don't know when I'm going to come, right? I might come in 5 years' time. Those are a little trickier because banks worry who's going to live in the property, right? Because for 5 years, are you going to keep it closed? Who's going to look after the property? What about the insurances?
Yeah.
So those are the things that you have to be a little mindful of, right? So that's a little bit more difficult, but the first two, we've seen cases like that, yeah.
Okay. So how easy is it to get a residential expat mortgage, would you say?
I think the first two categories which I mentioned is not too bad. You should be able to work something out because either you're moving back to the UK or your family is moving. So you should be able to work it out. I mean, obviously there's a lot of paperwork that might be involved. That's where you have people like us, right? We sort of try to make things as easy as possible. For example, we dealt with a Japanese client. His payslips were in Japanese, right? So we may have to get people like translators involved. If somebody's earning money as a self-employed, accounts are done slightly in a different format. It can be again in a different language as well. So we have to get those translated and certified, right? So that's where people like us come in and see what's the easiest way to do it. And we give advice to people like that. So you can have few complexities, but people like us, we usually can help people out, yeah.
Great. Well, could you let us know maybe a bit more about the buy to let for expats? Because that is a popular question, isn't it, that comes up?
It is. That's kind of the most popular one because what happens is a lot of people, they say, okay, we are moving to, say, the US, right? And we're not sure what it's going to be like, right? Because a new country, new place, how the work is, how the environment is, they don't know, right? So they go there and they see how it is, right? And after a while, they kind of settle down and they say, you know what, I don't think we're going to come back, or we're not going to come back for a long time. So they would have taken a consent to let at the time they went. So they will move that consent to let to a buy to let, right? So that's one of the most popular ones because consent to let is normally given for a short time period. Once your deal finishes, your consent to let generally finishes along with that as well. So you got to reapply. So quite often banks push you to get an expat mortgage, right? So that's the most common one we find. The second type is you have people who invest. They've now moved abroad, earning in a currency. Quite often UK, the sterling pound is a very strong currency, right? So therefore, if you buy foreign assets in the UK, you get the benefit of having it in pounds, your exchange gain, you got any appreciation of the property, you got that as well. And also, obviously, on a day-to-day basis, you got the normal profits you make. So there are three types of gains you get, right? So for an investor, it's quite lucrative. So people like that are quite interested as well. So we get that type of inquiries coming in as well. The third one we find is some expats want to buy properties through UK companies. So there's limited lenders in this space, but you got that type of investor as well. So you got a lot of people who are interested. And a new trend that we are finding is there are some expats who are interested in Islamic mortgages, right? So we see that kind of market opening up as well. They work in a slightly different basis, like they don't get involved in interest, but you have other Islamic alternatives. So we get that type of client as well. Those are the frequent ones we find that people come and ask for.
So maybe we could talk about the factors that affect expat mortgages, what the lender's looking for, things like that.
Okay, so the main things that lenders look for, the exchange rates, because if the exchange rates fluctuate a lot, that kind of puts lenders in a back foot, right? So if you are working with a sort of a stronger currency, like a euro or US dollars, right? It makes things easier. But if you're working with a slightly weaker currency, lenders get a little worried about it. The second thing is things like translation is quite important. If you're working in, say, China, Japan, they use a different language, right? So those things you have to be a little careful about, because you got to get all the pay slips translated or the accounts translated. So you have to work on things like that. Also, the important thing is, if it is an expat and a buy-to-let, you got to worry about the taxation, right? Because obviously it's an investment property in the UK. You will make profit, and on the profit, you have to file your tax return in the UK. So the local country might want you to file tax returns as well, but you still have to file the UK tax return, because there's something called a double taxation treaty. Obviously, I'm an accountant, so I know about these things. We do help our clients on these areas as well, but you got to be mindful of that, right? So you may benefit from the double taxation treaty, but it doesn't mean that you don't have to file tax in the UK. You do need to file your taxes in the UK. Those are the main things I think you have to be a little careful about when you invest.
Yeah, that's definitely worth bearing in mind. You touched on the Islamic mortgages. I just wondered if there was any alternatives for expats.
Yeah, like I mentioned before, Islamic mortgages are very popular now. We have people from the Middle East and some Asian countries, and people from different parts of the world who are after Islamic mortgages. And there are at least a couple of banks who offer expat mortgages for people who are looking for an Islamic solution. So it works very well for them. They work on a very different basis, because they don't use interest, but instead they use like a profit sharing basis sort of thing, right? But the most important thing is, these products, the Islamic mortgage products, they come with a no early repayment charge. So that is a very important thing, right? So at some point, if these clients decide, let's say they have a buy-to-let and they decide to come to the UK and live in the property, they can potentially convert it to a residential mortgage, because you can break the mortgage without paying a penalty, right? So that is a nice advantage. Or even if you move to the UK, from being an expat mortgage, you can move it to a normal mortgage, right? So without paying the penalty. So they find that as an advantage. This Islamic mortgage is not open for just people who are from the faith, right? It's open for anybody.
Anybody.
It is it's open for anybody. So it's becoming very popular because of some of these nice features it carries.
Yeah, okay, that's a good tip. So the last question that I have to sum it all up is, how can we help an expat as a mortgage broker?
Okay, expat mortgages are a very specialist area. Not all banks offer expat mortgages. And obviously, every country is different. So in the UK, the way we work is different. The way we get paid is different. But if you go to some other country, the way they work is different. The pay slips are different. The taxation systems are different. Yeah. So there can be a lot of complexity. Some banks want these things translated. Some banks want accountants to sign. So there is a lot of paperwork involved. And also, it's very difficult to pinpoint and say, okay, I can just walk into X bank and they will give you a mortgage, right? Because they don't. It's a specialist area. And there are certain countries that banks don't like to deal with as well. So you have all that complexities.
Yeah.
So us as brokers, we gather information about the client and their circumstances and their backgrounds. And then we come up with a solution for them. It avoids you having to call bank A, B, and C before deciding. Actually, it's not even A, B, and C, it's D that you need to go to, right? So we do that and we make things smoother for the client. Because the last thing you want is send information to the bank and the bank says, okay, this is not up to standard, can you send more, right? So we do all those checking for the clients and make things easier. We can have conversations with the banks, because we have people like the business development managers who regularly keep in touch with us. So therefore, we have built that relationship. So everybody is different. So there might be exceptional circumstances which we can discuss with the bank. Whereas if you walk in on your own, they will just go with the general guidance, right? So that way, it's generally helpful to work with the broker on these.
Yeah. And I do actually just thought of another question that I would like to ask. Does it take longer, the process, when you're applying for an expat mortgage than it would do for a regular mortgage?
It should do. Obviously, because of the complexities, because banks need to generally do more verification, right? So if you're a UK customer, you will have a credit history. For most of the expats, your credit history might be a little old, right? So if you've been out of the country for only 6 months, you might still have a decent credit history that banks can look at. But if you've been out for 5 years or 6 years, it's a long time to be out of the country, right? So, your credit scores might have dropped because you don't have any borrowings in the UK. So they have to do more checks. In UK, it's easier to call up companies to verify income. But if somebody is based abroad, it's a bit more of a long-winded process. So yes, it will take time. So you have to leave a little extra time to get these transactions completed. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you were going to do a remortgage, would you maybe suggest to people that they applied a little bit earlier, maybe a few months before?
Yeah, definitely. Just to avoid all those delays, right? Because there will be more paperwork than a regular mortgage that you get from a high street. So we have to sort of leave provision for that. So it's always good. We tell clients to apply at least 4 months in advance for these type of things.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'd say leave 4 months, because otherwise you might be cutting it fine. If you're lucky, if you can get an offer and get it completed in 1 or 2 months, but that's kind of really exceptional. Yeah, if you can get something done during that time. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so it takes a little bit longer. That's good to know. Thank you again, Ifthi, for joining us today. Some more great tips. I just wanted to put a little reminder out there that these tips may or may not be applicable to you, so please check with an advisor if they are suitable for you or not. And if you don't have a broker, I'll leave our contact details below, as we are always happy to help here at WIS. A little reminder that a mortgage is secured against your home or property, so it may be repossessed if you do not keep up with the mortgage repayments. Thank you for joining us today. We'll be back next week with another episode of Let's Talk Money and Mortgages. Have a great day, stay safe, and we'll see you again soon.